Hello and welcome to Three Questions with everybody. Randy Houle with us. Randy's a realtor. Today, Randy's going to offer you some tips on contingencies. Hey, Randy, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me.
So, Randy, we're talking a little bit before the show, and obviously, I'm not a realtor, but as a guy, just watching, I get concerned because I see people just waiving every contingency. They bid on a couple houses, maybe didn't get it, or they really want the house, and they're like, just going to roll the dice, going to waive it. Good, bad, or indifferent? Is that a good call?
I don't think so. Personally, for me, I would never advise a client to do that. Obviously, there are certain circumstances where it might be in their favor. In most cases, I would say it's not in their favor because you never know what the house, what can go wrong. I've even seen some new construction with issues that were picked up during a home inspection. Things happen.
So, what's your advice? How do we go around this?
There's a couple of different things that we've used to try to get offers accepted. It's never a fail safe, but some of the things that I've done personally, and I've talked to other agents and things that collaborate on is one, it's always good to home inspections, always one of the big ones that people come up with. And the biggest concern for a seller's perspective is that one, it delays and it kind of puts it up in the air a little bit. So one of the things that I've used in the past to alleviate that is you should shorten the inspection contingency period. Traditionally, we'd have about 10 days for an inspection contingency and any of that. If you work smartly, you can have a inspector lined up and do either a pre-inspection or have them literally lined up for like the next day after inspection so that you can shorten that time frame. And it adds some security and comfort to the sellers. Because now they're not waiting almost 2 weeks to find out what's going on with the inspection. They can find out in a matter of a couple of days. Wow, so that's one. That's one of the things that I've done with some of my clients. Another tip that we've used that has worked out pretty well for us for inspection contingencies is we've actually detailed out things that we know are older that we're not concerned about. If you're older home, maybe the heating system's towards the end of its life or the roof is towards the end of its life, and the buyer is aware of this at going in, and there's something that they're willing to take on. I've actually noted out those as excluded from the inspection, so that as long as they're functional at the time, that then we that the buyer is taking on the risk, or we put a numeric value. Basically, when it comes to that, the other concern is it always comes down to time and money for the seller. So anything that you can do to alleviate those concerns, that you're not going to use the inspection as a renegotiation or, we have seen that in the past, unfortunately, where someone comes in with a really high offer and then after the inspection, they throw a ridiculous number at you that they want to reduce it by. So anything like that you can alleviate the concern for the seller, to make it easier, make them more comfortable, and just let them know that, everything that you're doing is just basically for the concern of the buyer and not looking to do any back end arounds or things like that.
Now, how about anything else? Because like I said, I agree with you. It's just trying to get the buyer to, be comfortable and not think, hey, I got to wait 2 weeks now. And, there's always going to be something, and depending who you are. So for me in my life, Randy, I am totally useless when it comes to fixing anything. So anything is going to be like, oh my God, I don't know how to fix that. So we're trying to keep the buyer comfortable, right?
The whole goal is to make sure that the buyer's protected. You don't want a buyer moving into a house that now they, especially if they're stretched thin already, if they don't want to move in and finding out that they're going to have to put $30,000 into a property that they just don't have. But at the same point in time, when you're from the buyer's side, especially in this market where there are people out there who will waive everything, like you mentioned, you also want to make the seller comfortable enough to to be willing to accept that inspection. And so anything that we can do, like I said, from the inspection perspective, that's probably one of the bigger ones. Like I said, we've shorten up the time frames. We've, add number values. I've excluded items off them. Those are probably the three biggest things from an inspection standpoint. The other one that we always get is the appraisal contingency. That one's a little trickier because not a lot of times, especially if you have a first-time home buyer or somebody, they don't have the extra cash to bring to the table. Or at least, especially in this market, that's always a concern for the sellers because properties are going well over what we're asking price. So the appraisal is always a concern. That will it appraise at the value? And that is always hit or miss. It really depends on a lot of factors. And, the appraiser, what comps do they use? Make sure we run our comps at the time to make sure that we're comfortable with it. But even in this market, the numbers that were coming out, I can't comp them because, the stuff that was accepted, that we know what the offer was accepted on them, but it's not closed yet. So we can't count it as a comp. So this, some of the things that we've done to alleviate the appraisal contingency without completely waiving it, because that's another one that, especially if a person doesn't have the funds to waive that and be able to come to the table with more money. Sometimes we put a limit on that as well. Whereas, if there's up to $10,000 difference, the buyer will come to the table. After that, it would be a renegotiation, or the seller has the right to walk, obviously. That's one of the things that we've done. Another one that we've done is to alleviate that. And this one's a little bit, you have to have the right client for it, but I've also had a client who put a non-refundable deposit as part of the deposit up front. Part of that deposit was non-refundable, meaning if the appraisal or anything came back that they decided to back out of the deal, they were losing that money. And it was significant. They put, I think it was $5,000 that we did for that deal. But it gave the seller enough peace of mind that, listen, these people are here for real. They're in good faith. They want to make it happen, that the seller was impressed and they chose our offer. Again, not something that you can recommend. Each client's going to be different on what their tolerance levels are for risk versus, and how, like you said, if you've been burnt enough and you just want to be in a place, sometimes people are willing to throw it up in the air and see what sticks. But, the whole thing is to try to alleviate that and get creative. So for an appraisal, certain things like that is, put in a number where you're not completely waiving it, but saying, listen, we're willing to go this far. That's what we can come to the table with, or doing other tips and coming down to it. The ultimate thing for me, one of the biggest things that I can tell, and this goes for realtors as much as buyers out there, is have a good rapport with your fellow agents. Pick up the phone, call them, talk about your clients, talk about their interests, let them know that you're going to be accessible, available, and you're going to be doing everything you can to make this deal happen. And that is a big thing. I know many agents out there who are getting deals accepted while there's higher offers out there because of who they are and their reputation. Not just myself, there's lots of other agents that do this. It's a great thing to do. We network as much as possible. That's why a lot of them, Kevin, and just that alone, like when you have confidence in the other realtor on the other end of the deal, and it matters when you're sitting down with a seller, because sellers ask these questions, do you know the realtor? Do you know the lender? That to me, and as we've talked over the years, Kevin, that networking is actually one of the tips and tricks that we have, that we use, is because, that those relationships really do matter. If you know the lender on the other line, the attorney, especially if they work as a team and they do a lot of deals together, that they're going to do everything they can to put that through. And that would be one of the biggest things, is make sure, if it's not me that someone's going to be working with, make sure who you're working with, they have a strong team that they work with, and that they're, because it definitely does matter on the end of the line. If you have two offers that are similar, almost identical, and one agent is just going to get the deal done, they're going to make it work for their clients and for your clients. That definitely helps make a difference.
Definitely makes sense. So Randy, how can people reach out to you? How can they learn more, my friend?
You can follow me on Facebook at Homes by Houle. I also have my website, which is homesbyhoule.com. They can reach me anytime on my cell phone, text, or phone. I don't know if you want me to give that number.
Yes, please. Yep.
978-804-1108. If you're going to text, just leave a quick note with the name and what you're calling about. But normally I try to get back to people as quick as possible. Right now, things are obviously, spring market's busy. Sometimes I'm a little delayed, but usually by the end of the day, I'll be back to you.
Awesome. Randy, I really appreciate the few minutes to jump on the show. And as always, thanks for being my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.